Hello, everybody. My name is Yasi, and I'm from the University of Glasgow in Scotland. Today, I'd like to talk about how picture books reference all kinds of arts and artworks, which I refer to call it interpictoriality. In what follows, I'll talk about my inspirations and questions, methodologies and methods, and then introduce you the concept and its multiple features from different perspectives. In the end, I'll also mention some of the implications and my concerns about this study area. You see, the idea of words or artworks referring to other words or artworks has been adopted by artists and scholars for centuries, like this painting over here. From this painting, we can see that many masterpieces are reproduced in this picture to depict a scenario in the Uffizi Gallery in Florence. It is like wandering in the art world. Well, this strategy is also be frequently found in picture books. For example, Anthony Brown references a large number of fine arts in his Willy's Pictures and Willy the Dreamer. David Weisner integrates several artistic styles in his Art and Max. And his The Three Pigs is recreated based on the classic children's literature of the same name. Well, this idea associates me with a reflection on representing all kinds of arts and artworks in picture books. What is this illustrating strategy? What terminology and definitions can be used to speak of this concept? And are there different ways to use it aesthetically in picture books? In order to address my research questions from both academic and practical points of view, I introduced the three perspectives into my research: a literature review, a case study, and a picture book analysis. In collaboration, they are aimed to search for answers for the three research questions that I just showed you, which are actually about the relationship between the picture book, the original artwork that the book incorporates, and the meanings those interpictorial images could have for children in different levels of aesthetic and visual literacy development. Let's dive a little bit deep. The literature review in this study can be further divided into three subparts. The first subpart explores the picture book as an overall aesthetic object and detects aesthetics in a picture book's individual components, especially its illustrations. In the second subpart of literature review, the study dives deep into the heart of the current inquiry, interpictoriality in picture books. In this subpart, the study searches for and analyzes different definitions of interpictoriality based on the existing theories. Then it moves on to analyze the categories of interpictorial images, according to several picture book scholars' findings, such as Serafini, Beckett, Hospital Cabo, and her colleagues. And after analyzing the definitions and features of interpictoriality in picture books, the study then turns to the third subpart, which focuses on young readers' aesthetic understanding of interpictorial images. To find answers to the inquiry, Michael Parsons and Abigail Howson's study of children's developmental aesthetic experience of visual arts are investigated in detail to reflect on children's aesthetic reactions when reading interpictorial images in picture books. And next, examine why children's aesthetics are different from adults, and then explore several potential factors that might affect children's aesthetic development. Well, since one of the research aims to uncover how interpictoriality works in picture books to guide those who aspire to learn and create picture books, it was seen necessary to search for answers from the professionals in the field. Therefore, the study invites 6 illustrators to be interviewed. In their conversations, the illustrators are asked to interpret their understandings of the concept of interpictoriality and discuss their works that involve interpictorial images. In those semi-structured interviews, the illustrators are asked 6 leading questions to guide to the conversation, while also allowing both the illustrator and the researcher, and that is me, of course, room to diverge from the questions to uncover greater details. And based on the knowledge acquired from both the academic and practical point of views, the study selects 3 picture books that contain different levels of interpictoriality to examine the various related to theories. Katie and the British Artist by James Mayhew, The Goddess of Lower River by Ye Luying, and Art and Max by David Weissner. What is worth noting is 2 of the works, which are the Katie and the British Artist and The Goddess of Lower River, were created by the illustrators that I interviewed. Such a selection arrangement is aimed at better connecting the findings from the case study, which is perspective 2, with those of the picture book analysis, which is this perspective that I'm showing. Okay, let's look at the results. Picture book scholars have been exploring illustrators' reaction with fine arts in picture book illustrations and use different terms to identify this concept, such as intertextuality, artistic allusions, and appropriation of fine art. In 2018, Cabo and her colleagues proposed the term interpictoriality to refer to the connections between pictorial texts, and intertextuality to refer to the connections between images and texts in picture book illustrations. While in my research, I'm focusing on the picture book's visual aspects. For this reason, I refer to consider and explore the texts as a sort of visual elements as well. Although previous studies have introduced so many terms to identify this concept, the term interpictoriality might be the most up-to-date one, which fits my research well. And based on my study, the definition of interpictoriality that I announced refers to the interaction between a pictorial image and artworks or meta-discourses on arts that image involved with. Okay, some of the scholars have been also trying to analyze different categories of interpictorial images in picture book illustrations. Frank Serafini has divided them into 3 different categories in his research in 2015. In his theory, he observes that appropriating an original artwork as an interpictorial reference is called a reproduction. It suggests an illustration with a faithful rendering of the original artwork. Instead of quoting an entire artwork, sometimes illustrators either partially refer to the artwork or transform them to fit their work's visual style, context, or any other narrative purposes in the picture book. Serafini suggests there are 2 types in general. The first one is coming to life, which means the artist changed the position and the gesture of the character from the painting. And the second one is parodic transformation. In the illustration, we can see that the artist chooses the character Mona Lisa, modifies her look, and depicts her transformed image into the illustration. In the image, the identity of the character has been changed. But hey, let's just pause for a second. all Serafini mentions is about characters, right? So what about other kinds of arts? For example, what about those landscape or abstract arts or still life paintings? I think they should also get involved in this scope, aren't they? Continue. Okay, Sandra Beckett suggests that the illustrators who have open minds sometimes reference more than just one piece of art and extend their appropriation to an entire collection of arts. She defines this kind of interpictoriality as scavenging of styles. Beckett's concept is very similar to Serafini's stylization, but has a broader scope. For Beckett, these allusions are not only inspired by an art movement or a school of art, but also can be influenced by the characteristics from one particular artwork, like this one. And Serafini and Beckett both mentioned that some illustrators cleverly blend two or more arts in the same book, or even, as I observed, in one single illustration. This illustration is from one of my illustrator participants in my research. In this illustration, we can see that she has involved diverse art in her works. Another finding of this research is that illustrators sometimes select one or more particular elements from an artwork and repeatedly represent them. The study found two reasons why a particular element is selected. Firstly, this particular element is to convey significant meaning about the context of the book. And secondly, the image might carry some certain meanings for the illustrator himself or herself. As you can see from this slide, the image of the black bowler hat in Renee Margaret's painting, which appears in several of Anthony Brown's picture books, such as A Walk in the Park and The Voices in the Park. In Brown's work, Margaret's bowler hat might serve as a visual indicator of a character's interior mental states, or the character's social status, personalities, or feeling at the precise moment in the narrative. Additionally, Brown once admitted in an interview that himself is influenced by surrealism profoundly in his artistic career. Besides referencing artworks, some illustrators also involve the images of the artists who create the art. Additionally, illustrators seem to love including their own previous work and even the images of themselves in the picture book. Here, I would like to talk a bit more about referencing the images of themselves. Besides promoting illustrators themselves and showing their humor or irony, this kind of interpictoriality involves breaking the communicative boundary between the illustrator and the readers in the picture book. Let's think about it. Illustrators usually do not communicate with readers directly, aren't they? So this sort of self-referentiality is like breaking the fourth wall in a film or a performance. Referencing illustrators themselves in picture books sometimes provide them with a chance to break the narrative dimension and even communicate with the readers outside of the narrative dimension directly. More than one illustrator participant from my research have talked about this artistic activity, which is the relationship between the illustrator and their works. They believe that no one can see apart themselves from their own works. In some perspectives, you're always in your stories. Your works are always about you eventually. Picture book illustrations are your creations from your thinking, your feeling, and your experience. Those illustrators might have also already realized it and made it more clearly in their works. Okay. And sometimes we can see that although some images might not be considered as an actual artwork in picture book, they might be some like well-known people, a logo of a brand, or an image from a theme. This slide and the previous one about illustrators' self-referentiality might suggest that the boundaries between the fine arts, especially those contemporary arts and other visual productions, are blurring nowadays. Hence, it would appear that art, not art, identification of an interpictorial image is fluid and uncertain. As I suggested, since one of the aims of my research is to uncover how interpictoriality is created in picture books, it will seem necessary to search for answers from the professionals in the practice field. Therefore, I have invited 6 participants to take interviews with me, 2 from the UK, 1 from America, and 3 from China. The participants were all experienced picture book illustrators and/or illustration lecturers working at universities. The conversations include ideas that illustrators had learned from their illustrating practice. Well, due to the time limits, I'll just have to pick up some of the findings and share with you, but they are very interesting. Scholars like Serafini and Beckett believe that only a reader with a relatively mature artistic experience is able to decode the interpictorialities that contain more layers of complexity, while young readers with less knowledge might still not be able to recognize them. However, illustrators from my interviews would not consider this situation to be the case of a young reader cannot recognize interpictoriality. Instead, they would describe it as a condition which a reader encounters an interpictorial image in a picture book before coming across the original artwork. Such a description suggests that first, one's ability to interpret interpictoriality develops over time. And second, this condition of different orders in which one encounters an original artwork and an interpictorial image impacts children's reading experience. Although some young readers might not be able to identify an illustrator's complicated interpictoriality at once, they might encounter the original artwork in an exhibition at a later point and recall having seen the interpictorial image previously. It is like meeting an old friend. This would provide children with another experience, I believe. Hence, while the order in which one encounters an artwork and an interpictorial image that it references, it does not determine whether the reader is able to identify the interpictorialities. Well, using the information gathered from both literature review and 6 illustrator participants, I would also undertook an in-depth examination of 3 specific picture books that involve interpictoriality in different levels. Here, I would like to talk about this one, The Goddess of Blue River, which is also created by one of the illustrator participants from my study, Ye Luying. Well, through the exploration, I found that except for illustrations, interpictorial designs can also emerge in other components in the picture book. This picture book contains several pages in the form of accordion. It seems that illustrators attempt to emulate the Chinese ancient book binding style of orihong or 折子. The illustrator's imitation of the ancient book form provides a frame to which to convey a sense of interpictorial atmosphere of Chinese art. And this accordion-like appearance draws readers' attention and emphasizes the visual aesthetic temperament of the overall picture book. Besides, the texts on the illustration page are arranged vertically, as you can see over here. This kind of text layout used to be the most common form of typography appeared in China. From the picture book, we can see that the text can assist readers to have a better understanding of interpictorial designs from both literary and visual perspectives. And of course, you can also find this feature in some other picture books too. For example, Art and Max is another book that I selected and finessed. The typography, the colors, the size, and the texture of the texts can all represent some aesthetic meanings in the picture book. Okay, another visual element, thumbnail images, appear in 2 of my selected picture books. Picture books with thumbnail images seem to have a common purpose. Instead of simply applying arts to enrich the visual effect of the illustrations, these thumbnail images tend to be introduced the referenced arts and the artists to readers. It's like closing credit roll of a movie. The page of thumbnail images presents the casts of the picture books as a final scene to wrap up the story. Okay, well, I'm wrapping it up too. My research aims to study interpictoriality by exploring the relationship between the original artwork, children's picture books, and meaning making. I would like to contribute to the visual aesthetics of picture books and associate it with the illustrating practice field. Students of illustrations and those people who aspire to create picture books may find that the concept provides them with some inspirations. And my research also intends to provide support for teachers and other educators, such as those interacting with children in the classroom and library. I hope my research can assist them to help children to practice identifying arts in picture books and improve children's meaning making and aesthetic approach to visual arts and enhance their perception of visual narratives. And ultimately, as a reader of picture books, it is children who encounter picture books and the artworks within them. In the process of looking, talking, and learning about artworks involved, children's awareness of the aesthetics of artworks and sense-making skills may be trained and enriched, perhaps inspire them to create more of their own artwork. Well, however, it might be very interesting to note that Brown once mentioned a lawsuit that the Margaret Foundation took out against him for using the element of this French artist's work in his picture books. Brown's case might raise some questions. What should illustrators be aware of when referencing some other picture books or other people's works? What levels of art referencing will require illustrators to apply for copyright permission? And what would be considered as a restricted area for illustrators when creating interpictoriality? Additionally, another topic to explore further is the diversity in interpictoriality. Normally, the artwork that appears in picture books tend to be the European high arts or East Asian traditional arts. Although some authors and illustrators of colors are now addressing this gap, however, from my opinion, is far from enough. This might raise questions about the diversity and inclusion, and invites us to think about how arts from other cultures, especially from minority cultures, can be represented, and how children from minority groups receive those arts. All these questions, I believe, need to be explored further. And that will be the end of my presentation. Thank you.